What we're looking at is a Triumph Daytona with its stock license plate assembly. A lot of motorcyclists will agree that this isn't the most aesthetically pleasing component on a motorcycle. But R&G Racing can address that with their Tail Tidy, which is one of the most popular items that we have from the R&G lineup. So in this video, we'll go over the install of an R&G Tail Tidy on a Triumph Daytona. R&G does a great job of including everything you need to install one of these Tail Tidies on your motorcycle. So as always, be sure to read thoroughly through the instructions, lay out all your hardware, and keep track of generally what's going where. You'll find all the nuts, bolts, and some electrical connectors to make this installation happen. We're going to start here by removing the rear seat and then disconnecting 2 electrical wires for the turn signals and rear brake light, as well as 4 bolts. That'll remove the stock license plate bracket here. Once we get this final bolt out, we can take the license plate bracket assembly away from the motorcycle, threading the turn signal wire through the hole. Then we're going to take this assembly away from the motorcycle so we can work on it and take off the components that we need. Now that we've got the stock license plate bracket off the motorcycle, we can begin to strip it down and take the components we're going to reuse. Now, R&G does a good job of supplying you with all the hardware and connectors that you may need, including these bullet connectors. Those are only going to be used if you go with an aftermarket turn signal, which we're not going to do. In this case, we're going to reuse the stock turn signals from the motorcycle. Now, the only thing we do need to crimp in is going to be for the illuminator for your license plate. Now, again, R&G provides you with all the connectors that you're going to need, so we can just cut into that, splice this in, and we're good to go. So to continue on, we're going to take our stock license plate bracket. We're going to discard the rubber grommet. Back here, we're going to undo these clips to get the reflector off so we can access the other side of these bolts. And we're going to undo our turn signal connectors. That'll allow us to spread this component apart and get to the wiring inside that we're going to need to reuse. So when we look at the license plate bracket assembly, at this point, we're going to disconnect some wires, and it's a good idea to notate which goes to which side. So we're going to take a look at our right blinker. We're going to follow that wire, get it out of the holder, and I'm going to take a note here that the blue wire is for my right blinker and the green is for the left. This may be different on your bike, but you'll definitely want to take note so you don't have to do trial by error later to figure out which is which. So once you've made that note of which wires are which, we can disconnect them and get the blinkers out of the license plate bracket. Now that the turn signals are off, we can disconnect the license plate light. We're going to undo its bolt. And we'll be working with this piece next. So this is the connector that we're going to need to reuse and attach to the R&G Illuminator. That's going to make it so it plugs into your factory harness. So here we have our OE license plate light and the new R&G license plate light with the bullet connectors already attached. What we're going to need to do is cut this in the middle so we can crimp on the other side of the bullet connector as well as the plastic sheeting, and then later we'll use the washers and the nuts to attach it to the license plate bracket. To crimp the bullet connectors on, I've used this crimping tool, which does a nice job of folding the metal over the wire. If you don't have that, you can use a set of needle nose. You just want to be careful that the wire is crimped appropriately and stays within the bullet connector. So at this point, we've got our electrical connections all put together, and we're ready to begin the final assembly. And this is kind of where it gets exciting because you start to see how this whole thing comes together. So the first part of assembly is installing the cross brace into the Tail Tidy. It has a nice little pass-through for your wires to sit in. There's bolts that are supplied. We're going to use just a dab of thread locker on those to keep them in place. We're going to affix the turn signals to either side, and we're going to attach the illuminator. We're going to use a bit of super glue on the shroud to keep it attached. So we've got all our wires run. The routing is through the holes that are provided. It's a little bit tight, but what you want to do is pass through one connector at a time and you can make it happen. We have our turn signals attached. That's going to be a 5mm Allen on one side with a 10mm nylock on the other side. So you'll need tools for that. We also attached the license plate light with these 6mm nuts and a washer. you're going to want to have a nut driver or a 6mm box wrench or an adjustable wrench that can get down to that size to do that. And we've also affixed the shroud with our super glue as we saw earlier. So once everything's assembled, you have these nice wire keepers and some zip ties to neaten everything up. So the wire keepers just peel and stick on the back, you fold the tines over to hold the wires, and I think everybody knows how to use a zip tie at this point. So now that we've got our Tail Tidy assembly complete, it's time to put it on the bike. To do so, we're going to come underneath, run the wires up through, and then install this spacer between the Tail Tidy and the motorcycle. So this is the OE sub-harness that we took out of the original factory license plate bracket. Now this has the connectors for your turn signals and illuminator and the tie-in to the motorcycle. So we're going to install that now. I know from my notes earlier that the blue is the right turn signal and the left is the green, so I should be able to get this correct on the first try. So now that all our connections are made, you may have a little extra wire. We can just tuck that away, use some zip ties and neaten that up. So we've got our Tail Tidy fitted to the motorcycle. Everything looks great. One thing we noted was that the lowermost bolt was a little difficult to get to. So on a Daytona, it's probably easiest to take your rider's seat off using the two 5mm bolts. Gives you a little bit better access under the seat. Everything's looking great. Turn signals work. License plate light works right away. We're good to go. Pillion seat goes on, and we're done. For more information on what fits your bike, check out TwistedThrottle.com.